You're listening to the Shared Security Podcast with Tom Eston and Scott Wright, exploring the trust you put in people, apps, and technology.
Hosted by Scott Wright, the Streetwise security coach, and Tom Eston, penetration tester and ethical hacker. And sponsored by Security Perspectives, your source for tailored security awareness training and assessment solutions. We bring you stories, advice, and tips to help you make better risk decisions because nobody else can make them for you.
Episode 64. Cover your dog's ears because we've got ultrasonic tracking of TV commercials.
Hello and welcome to the Shared Security Podcast, episode number 64 for, I think it's June 7th or something like that. Is that right, Tom?
It is June 7th. That's
Excellent.
correct.
Yeah. And I'm Scott Wright here with Tom Eston, the guy who needs no introduction. How's it going, Tom?
Or I'll introduce myself. Hi, I'm Tom Eston.
Yeah, go ahead. Do that.
Yeah. Things are great over here. Just been busy with work, busy with just moved into a new house. So,
Nice.
Yeah, good times.
New security system?
I do, and in fact, I purchased one of those Ring doorbell cameras.
I was thinking about that. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I maybe in maybe the next episode I'll give the overview of it. But the short story of it is I really like it a lot, and
Cool.
it's a nice addition to my front door.
Yeah, I guess the one comment I would have is I know they had some security difficulties early on. There was like people breaking into them and somehow recovering Wi-Fi keys or something. But I think they've probably matured a bit.
Yeah, it seems like it. Knowing me, I've done my research and I have may have tested some things with the camera that maybe I shouldn't have tested, but I'll provide an update. I think on the next podcast. I think our listeners would be interested because the bottom line is I think it's a good addition to any home security system.
A good layer to put on your security system, right? It's not your entire security system.
No,
hopefully.
No, not by any means.
Yeah.
No.
Awesome. Well, that's good. Yeah. So, I hope the move went well and that you're all settled. And I went through that last year, but yeah. Yeah. So, we've had a little bit of a break since we had Jason on, and it's there's things happening we should talk about.
I can't believe there's things going on in the security and privacy world. It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
it never stops.
Yeah. Well, we better get started then. Do you want to do a little run through the stories?
Yeah, certainly. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about the Android phones that can listen to inaudible sounds in ads. That we may have touched on this if you remember those Vizio TVs that were taking your information and or actually it was Samsung, I think, that could listen in on conversations and
this is a little different dimension, right? This is on the tracking side rather than the actual personal information, which I have a kind of an interesting comment about. So, but let's describe what the issue is at the moment.
Great. Yeah. So it's there are apps that can be downloaded to your Android device. They didn't mention iOS, but Android devices that can listen for these inaudible sounds in advertising.
Mm-hmm.
So on TV commercial, radio, or something like that.
Yeah.
So
we'll leave the details for the full deep dive. But other stories?
We'll talk about attackers that can use video subtitles to hijack your devices. So when you're watching a movie, maybe a foreign film, and you pull up a subtitle feature to watch the movie, there's been a flaw in that feature that could make your devices vulnerable.
I see. So no matter what language the movie was in you were watching, the hijacking threat comes in English, right?
It doesn't have to be English.
Basically, they just take over the device, right, or kill it, or
right.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that.
Cool.
And then there was just recently, this is hot off the press, if you will. There was some news about printer tracking dots, which are Now, back in the news, I don't think we've ever covered printer tracking dots in previous episodes.
I don't think we have, but I know it's been around for a while, so we'll have some good discussion on that.
It has, so that's very interesting and very timely given the recent news.
Yes.
And then to mention about home security systems, Scott, there's been some reported security vulnerabilities, some of the most popular ones. So ADT, AT&T, some of the big ones, and so we'll talk about that and maybe what the risk is. The summary is not really a huge risk, very low risk, but still interesting to talk about.
Well, you got to keep an eye on these guys because you never know.
Yeah, absolutely, especially when it comes to the security of your home. So
yes, yeah. And WannaCry.
Yeah, I WannaCry for a long time. That's all I saw in the news was WannaCry and that ransomware attack. So we're gonna just break down a brief summary of what it was, who was impacted, and what you should do now if you haven't done anything about this ransomware
now
attack.
that the dust has settled, we can analyze it in some objectivity, right?
That's right.
Excellent. Well, that sounds like a great podcast episode. So let's go back to the beginning and talk about Android phones.
Yeah, so this is one that there are apps that use this. Essentially, it's an SDK, which is a toolkit that a developer can use to interface with another system. And they were able. These apps are using this ability to allow if there are ads that use these ultrasonic sounds, this app can pick that up. And the biggest issue is that they are bypassing a lot of Google's, let's just say, privacy policies that they say developers need to disclose when an app does a certain privacy-related function, like listening to conversations or accessing your photos, or all of those types of things.
Yeah, it's an interesting angle. Like as you said, we were concerned a while ago about privacy of appliances like TVs recording or sending audio or doing something with audio without your knowledge. But this is sort of a whole other level, right?
Yeah, totally new level. And it was a little concerning seeing the number of apps that are out there in the Google Play Store that have this ability, based on some of the research that was done. So it's we've talked about this with Android specifically, that Google tries to do the best enforcement they can of apps that do things like this, but it really comes down to the developer as well as the user community. So if others are talking in those comment sections on the app reviews and things like that, that's a good way to know, hey, there's something fishy about this app. I might not want to download it. On the flip side, Apple seems to do a little bit more invasive testing of apps that are in the App Store. That's just always been that way. Google's gotten better, but yeah.
I have a question. So I'm wondering, technically, I'm assuming this is how it works. So if an advertiser, for example, wants to, for whatever reason, track a user or a person who may be watching their ad, basically they have to interface both with the audio of the advertisement itself, right? They have to inject some audio into that ad, and then they have to somehow interface with the app on the phone that would be listening for the audio. And they would have to put in some unique identifier to say, actually, it would be on the phone side, right? When it listens or hears the ad, it would recognize the ad, and then it would tag on the user information that it knows about and put that in and send it back to the advertiser. That's roughly how it would work, right?
Correct. Exactly. And the kind of the freaky part about it is that, advertisers may not have to disclose that they're using these, inaudible beacons in their ads. So there could be big companies using this right now, and we just don't know because there's not a lot of guidance or even privacy laws that address this particular use case.
I think it all probably comes down to what you define as personal information with respect to privacy. I've done a fair bit of privacy work in the last little while, and some of it, it always comes down to what's the definition of personal information, and what, because that's what the focus of privacy is: sharing of personal information, collecting of personal information, protecting it. So if you can define the personal information as including any information regarding the device that a user is using, right, that uniquely identifies it, that could potentially be tied to a particular person. And tracking in general, I think, now should be considered to be a privacy topic, for discussion. So all of the personal information that gets incorporated into a tracking technology or methodology really should be considered to be personal and private and affect privacy. And my question, I guess, would be, do the Google terms actually define privacy in that way? And are the vendors either not trying to understand or choosing not to understand, the implications of that definition?
Yeah, all good points, and it's going to be interesting to see how these types of things play out. But I'm fascinated by, they call this now ultrasonic based tracking. So, how are big companies like Google and Apple and others and government regulators going to include this now as this is part of any tracking?
It's kind of interesting if you use the analogy of the cookies, right, from browsers. Initially people didn't know cookies were there, and eventually, you had to go to a setting to turn them off, and then eventually, when privacy, advocates got involved, then you have to explicitly or leave cookies off by default, and the user would turn them on if they wanted them. Now they're on by default again, right? So it's kind of been a crazy roller coaster ride for this, and I'm sure that the tracking technologies like this and the ultrasonic stuff, because you don't know it's happening, obviously, if you can't hear it.
Yeah.
But there could be technologies, I guess, that somehow detect it. I don't know. If you had an app on your phone.
There is a technology. It's called a dog, right? Dogs can detect ultra, those types of things that we can't hear.
Yeah,
so maybe your dog will pick it up. Who knows?
Yeah. Good point. Woof.
That's right.
All right. Well, so that's cool. What else do we have next?
I wanted to chat about the new attack on video subtitles that can hijack your devices. So this is made popular with Scott. I'm not sure if you heard of the Kodi popularity.
Yep.
Or
so
that name.
All the players that people use when they download torrents, right?
That's right. When they want to watch movies and TV shows for free without paying for them, which aka pirating. That's been very popular recently with installing this software called Kodi on, like, say, an Amazon Fire Stick, or building it with like a Raspberry Pi, and then having the ability to get all these free, streaming and other types of shows. Kodi essentially is just a media player,
right?
Very similar to VLC, or there's another one, Popcorn Time, and there's Windows Media Player. If you have Windows, Apple will be like QuickTime, those types of things.
Yeah.
And there was a vulnerability that was found in the way subtitles are handled. Essentially, a subtitle is a file that is attached to a movie or a TV show that you download. A lot of that information is hidden from the normal person viewing it or accessing the file. But there was a vulnerability that was found that was able to be exploited. And so just by playing a movie with a subtitle, an attacker could exploit that and then gain control of the underlying operating system. So that could be your computer, that could be, whatever you're running the movie on, which is pretty serious if you think about, how many devices can be running movies.
Do you know if you actually have to have the subtitles turned on for it to affect the threat, or is it ignored if you have a setting for subtitles being turned off?
It was only if subtitles were enabled, based on the research.
I guess it could depend on the player, right? Some players may load the subtitles and analyze them or interpret them, even if you don't have them turned on. So I guess you have to kind of check and see which kind you use. and see whether it's vulnerable. Yeah.
Yep. And so there was four different ones that were vulnerable, and they've all been patched. So that's the good news. But like we said, with anything, right? You've got to go out. You've got to make sure you have the latest update to the media player that you're running.
Right.
So if you
like
to use subtitles,
and for vendors, people manufacturing this stuff, this is a plug for your company, right, Tom? So application security kind of matters in this case, right? If you could have analyzed the code, and I suspect, because it hits so many different players, you got to think that they were using some common, open source code or something, right, that had a vulnerability that nobody caught.
Yep. Yep, and that's what the researchers have said as well. They only tested this in the four most popular media players, but there's most likely this vulnerability would work in others as well. So, good idea just to update your stuff.
Yep. Cool. And then printers. What else? What other devices can't we trust?
I love printers. It just reminded me of like going back, many years ago when we had I maybe mentioned it on the podcast, but when I was a pen tester doing internal network tests, and I used to love finding printers because they would just give away everything. All the secrets of the organization were in printer.
Yeah.
Because you could look up print jobs, you could hijack them, you could get credentials. It was just
didn't they?
amazing,
some of them, some of the printers or scanners at least, weren't they recording every document that they actually scanned and storing them in a disk somewhere?
Yep, because they were essentially just embedded systems that would have a hard drive and everything else, and would store copies of everything that people were printing and scanning, and it was great. It was amazing.
I was thinking of that as I was throwing away a printer last weekend. So I wonder what documents are on that printer. Yeah. So this one is interesting though.
Yeah. So this just came out. There was a woman named Reality Winner. I did a double take when I first saw that name because I thought someone was trolling me on Facebook. Like someone really is named Reality and their last name is Winner. The puns are just endless with that. But she was accused of basically doing like what Edward Snowden did and stealing information from the NSA when she was a contractor there, and all over the media. We won't go into details with that. But the bottom line was that she was caught because she had printed out a document that she leaked on a color printer at the NSA. And the NSA obviously tracks everything that anybody does.
Yeah.
And they used these printer tracking dots to actually, find out that it was her that printed it, when, where, what time, and all of that information.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings up the question of, do printers track you? And apparently a lot of people didn't know this, but and I actually forgot about it.
Yeah.
Because it's been a while. Most color laser printers have this feature built in.
Yeah, they're just little micro dots, right, that you can't really see with with the naked eye, really, unless you know where to look for and what to look for. But I actually heard about this similar issue in a TED talk by Mikko Hyppönen in 2012, where he was talking about how these technologies are being used to track what's been printed. He said even going back further, a bit of trivia, old typewriters used to have intentional differences in their striking keys, so that you could identify a typewriter uniquely by what was printed. And so, but the same idea for printing. Now, who's driving this? You got to believe it's state-sponsored stuff, right? Like that the governments are either paying or forcing manufacturers to put this kind of tracking technology in for various reasons, I guess. Which I don't think is great for the public interest. But one thing I guess I would point out is when you're inside an organization, they kind of do have the right to track you in various ways, right? Or they should be making you sign a thing that says you agree that they do have that right. And so I wouldn't be surprised if most intelligence organizations have some way of tracking what you print, even if it's black and white, based on some signature that comes out on paper from each printer.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll link in the show notes the EFF article on this of how they have been researching this for years, and a lot of the reasons why printer companies have put this into technology is because of the government asking them to do that. Because I don't think anyone in the business world would actually have maybe a use case for it, but a lot of people in the business world don't even know about this. So. It is interesting. But the bottom line is it's really safe to assume any color laser printer probably has this type of tracking mechanism.
Yeah.
And it's just something to note.
Yeah.
And something that's interesting.
I think it could extend beyond color. I mean, easily, right?
I'm sure.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Same as with the old typewriters. But,
yep.
Yeah. I mean, at home, you kind of expect a bit of privacy. At work, you probably don't. So that's the bottom line.
You shouldn't.
Yeah.
You shouldn't. If you're using company-owned equipment and the company network, they all disclose that to you when you're hired, and that's why we have information security policies and other things that you need to abide by, because that is true, and that is legal for them to monitor what you do and those types of things if at their discretion.
So, although preferably they put it in an employee agreement so you recognize it and
right.
acknowledge it.
Yes,
so
that is correct. Yep.
Cool. All right. So back to home security. Let's have a look at those home security systems.
Yeah, so some researchers, I guess this goes back to October of 2016. There was a researcher at Rapid7 that did that disclosed some vulnerabilities to some of the major home security companies like ADT and Comcast and AT&T with some vulnerabilities. And I just recently, those companies have since remediated those vulnerabilities, which is now why it's just come out recently in the news, which is great. That's what we call ethical disclosure of vulnerabilities, and the right way to do it. And it was interesting going through this. These issues were I'd consider them kind of low risk. A lot of these things would allow through some network attacks, cause a fail open condition. So it would disarm like a door or a window sensor. There was weak issues with the wireless networks that these devices were connected to. So it'd make it easy for a hacker to break in and change settings and things on the security systems and things like that. But it would take a lot of work to do that based on how I read through this. But the bigger issue is it's something that I don't think gets a lot of attention is home security systems in general, and kind of the high criticality of how important that is to to people when you're with people concerned about their physical security. And it's just still surprising to me that there's not a lot of attention of the security of these devices, and we talk about this all the time, right? A lot of these are considered the Internet of Things, right? They all talk to the internet, and they're getting more advanced, like the Ring cameras and other things like that. So it is interesting. And by the way, that Ring camera can actually tie into an ADT security system, which I find fascinating as well. So
very interesting. Yeah. So do you know if the study included only the customer side equipment and network stuff, or was it looking at any vulnerabilities on the sites? I guess they wouldn't be able to do that kind of thing without the permission of the companies.
Right. No, these were all installed devices like, say, you would have installed in your house.
Right.
The sensors, the access points that you put your code in to disarm,
controllers and stuff.
Controllers. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Interesting. I wonder if there are any, I didn't see in the list, but I wonder if there are any Canadian companies there, because we don't have Xfinity and Comcast or AT&T here. We do have ADT, I think, but...
yeah, I think they're a big global company.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, people should be definitely keep an eye on any news about vulnerabilities related to their own home security, and especially if they're tying Internet of Things stuff into it.
Oh, exactly. And all of these systems now allow some type of tie-in or API, or then that's what I found out through my ADT system. They call it ADT Pulse, and they have a list of other providers like Wemo and all these other,
right.
the systems that can turn your lights on and off. And now you can actually, through the ADT app, you can control everything in one place, as long as ADT is a partner with one of these other companies.
Mm-hmm.
And as an attacker, now I only have to go to one place to control.
Which should be a secure place, being that it's a security company, but you can't make too many assumptions there.
Hey, nothing is 100% secure. We know that.
All right. Yeah. Let us think on that for a minute. Okay. There we go.
So, what makes you want to cry, Scott?
Seeing too many headlines of the same thing over and over and over again.
Oh, wasn't that crazy?
Yeah.
This is nuts.
I'm sure people are sick and tired of hearing about WannaCry. I didn't even blog about it because I was already sick of it by the time I got around to writing anything. But yeah, it's what's interesting, and I think a number of people did sort of ask me what I thought of it. And I think the thing here, it's essentially the same as any other ransomware, except that it exploited a vulnerability that was really easy to spread through, right? Is that fair?
Yeah, exactly. Eternal Blue.
Yeah.
Right.
And I thought at one point I read it was actually a similar, if not the same, vulnerability that existed that allowed Conficker, the worm, in 2008 to spread. And I think it was related to weak or easy to guess credentials for admin accounts on systems.
Yeah, it was the SMB.
Oh, the SMB server message block stuff. Yeah. But anyway, if it's a weakness in Windows that lets people log in and get admin privileges somehow, then that probably lets it spread pretty fast.
Yeah, and the interesting piece of it too was this was really designed for older Windows operating systems. So even going back to like Windows XP, Windows 8, Windows Server 2003, these are actually these are actual OSs that Microsoft has said we don't support anymore, and they actually went ahead and released a patch for it.
Yeah, that was surprising.
Just to make sure, which was nice.
But I also heard that there weren't really that many XP systems actually affected.
Yeah, it wasn't. There was it was mainly more recent systems, as the case was with that hospital that got infected was, I think, the biggest one that made all the news. So
very interesting.
So the summary is just patch your stuff, right?
Yes.
That's the biggest. I think that's a theme in a lot of these topics that we've covered in the podcast today. Is you really got to stay vigilant with patching all of your things.
Yep.
And it's not easy. It's not like we can just say just go ahead and patch everything. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time, and even for someone like me that's pretty technical and I can do this quite easily, it's still a pain, and
yeah,
I don't like doing it either. And so I can imagine, maybe some of the listeners that just maybe not as tech savvy, it can be very challenging, and it's unfortunately a lot of the manufacturers of these devices and OSs and other things don't make things very user friendly. I think it's getting better, but there's still a long way to go with how we update things.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a huge other story or a huge other topic to talk about. But I think, obviously the technical vendors, security vendors are trying their best to address these things. One comment actually I did see, I don't know if the other vendors are doing it. I know Trend Micro, who I know a few people there that is a security software company. They actually have a solution that sort of lets you lock down a folder on your computer to say, don't let anything change this without my knowledge. And so if you get ransomware and it tries to encrypt your documents or whatever, you actually get some protection against that proactively, which is kind of new to me. I hadn't heard of anything that could really prevent that. So it's good. I thought I'd mention it.
That is good. Yeah. I'd also be curious to know, just from our listeners, if anyone has ever been infected with any kind of ransomware.
Yeah, and what they did. Did they pay? Did they let it go?
Yeah.
Did they hack it back?
Right, exactly. Yeah, maybe we'll throw up like a survey up on Facebook or something, and we'll see what kind of results we get. That'd be interesting to discuss.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Well, I think that covers all of our content for today. Good coverage, I think, and getting caught up on things. Just a couple, yes. I guess I just want to make an announcement about how you can get reminded of new podcast episodes if you're not already signed up. We have a newsletter that I try to send out as soon as we publish an episode, and you can find the sign up for that on the sharedsecurity.net website. At the bottom of each, it's at the bottom, isn't it? Or near the player icon, yep. Where you can actually click the link just to sign up and get reminded when we have new episodes. And on that sign up form also, I should just mention, you can choose to sign up for the podcast newsletter as well as my Streetwise Security News, which is just a little blurb I send out every couple of weeks with a story and a couple of tips on security tips for employees or individuals or managers too. So getting pretty good response on that, but it might be of interest.
Great. That's awesome. And I'd add too, we had, hopefully everyone has listened to the previous episode. That was episode 63 with Jason Street. I encourage everyone to check that out.
That's a don't miss episode.
Absolutely. And, we're looking for other podcast guests. So if you know of anyone, or maybe you would like to be a guest, reach out to us. Twitter, Facebook, all the usual means, feedback at sharedsecurity.net. And we'd be happy to discuss that with you.
That would be great. Always appreciate suggestions of people. If you have another favorite podcast or personality that you think it would be interesting to talk to, we will try to do that. Excellent. So I guess we're getting close to the end. Any news? Are you going to Black Hat this year, Tom?
I am, actually.
Wow.
Yes, I will be at Black Hat. So anybody that's out there, let me know. Maybe we could meet up.
That would be great. Unfortunately, I won't be, as usual. Big surprise, eh?
Another opportunity missed.
Yeah, well.
To meet me in person.
Maybe next year. If we ever do meet, it's going to have to be a big celebration.
I know. We'll have to do a live podcast.
That would be cool. Yeah. Do a Facebook
person.
Live. We'll do a Facebook Live and record live.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
great.
We'll let everybody know where and when, and we'll make a party out of it.
And it'll be the only two of us showing up. So.
But we don't have to report on that part. We could just say, yes,
who are these guys?
We had a private meeting.
That's right.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time on the Shared Security Podcast.
Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.